Well, howdy, Broncos country. Mace here to talk about how it's clear what the focus of the Broncos offseason is. It's clear because of what we see in terms of what they're emphasizing at the NFL Scouting Combine. So, Thursday morning, February 27th, tight ends come to the podium to talk with media. And all of the top tight ends in the class talking about the likely first-rounders, Colston Loveland from Michigan, Tyler Warren from Penn State, and then kind of into that next wave of tight ends, Elijah Arroyo from Miami of Florida, Gunnar Helm out of Texas, Terrence Ferguson from Oregon. Of course, Helm and Ferguson are both guys from the Denver area. They all had formal interviews with the Broncos here. So that's at least 5 formal tight end interviews for the Broncos at the Combine. Make no mistake, they are looking heavily at this position. Running backs we'll hear from on Friday. But it's another layer to the Broncos' search for a pass-catching target on the inside. Now, Sean Payton likes to use the term joker, and that joker can be a running back or a tight end. Sometimes it's been a tight end for him. Sometimes it's been a running back. Sometimes he's had both. You go over the years, the guys he's talked about specifically as his jokers, the tight ends were Jeremy Shockey and Jimmy Graham. The running backs were Reggie Bush, Darren Sproles, and Alvin Kamara, all of them superior pass catchers. You know, Alvin Kamara, for example, never a 1,000-yard rusher, but someone that a lot of years you could count on for 1,500 yards from scrimmage because of what he could add as a receiver. That inside target that makes the Broncos, or made the Saints, pardon me. You'd like to see it with the Broncos, but you haven't seen it with the Broncos because he hasn't had that guy. It's part of what made the Saints so hard to defend, as George Payton said a few days ago, made that offense hell to contend with when he had that target. Sean Payton has not had that target in Denver. Why hasn't he had it? Well, first of all, he had to prioritize. He and George Payton had to prioritize how they built this team starting a couple of years ago. And this is the first offseason that they've had basically everything that you would want to have at your disposal in an offseason in terms of adequate cap space and most, if not all, of your draft capital, certainly all of your draft capital in the first 2 days of the draft, rounds 1, 2, and 3. Denver hasn't had that since 2021, George Payton's first offseason as general manager. They didn't have that for reasons we all know. The Russell Wilson trade, the trade to get Sean Payton to be the head coach in the first place. So, because they didn't have draft capital, they were compromised there. They had cap space in 2023, but they didn't have cap space in 2024. So go back 2 years. You have the cap space, but you don't have draft capital. So what do you focus on? Well, you focus on the interior. You build from the inside out. That's why it's Mike McGlinchey, Ben Powers, Zach Allen as your 3 big pickups that offseason. That's where you're putting your investment. Build from the core and then go out from there. Try to get that offensive line right. Sean Payton has said time and again the offensive line sets the tone for the organization, and certainly that defensive line, it needed some restoration work even then. It needed more restoration work an offseason later, but we'll get to that. So you start there. The Broncos' offensive line became one of the better units in 2023 in the NFL, and it started with those 2 big-ticket additions in Powers and McGlinchey. It also helped that you had Lloyd Cushenberry improve, although the Broncos couldn't keep him. You had Quinn Miners improve, and you had Garrett Bowles return from injury. So you go to 2024. Unlike 2023, you don't have cap space. And you don't have cap space because Russell Wilson and cutting him has blown a crater in your salary cap. You end up with $89 million plus of dead money, $53 million of that from Russell Wilson's contract alone. So, your draft capital is coming back. You don't have a second-round pick because of the Sean Payton trade, but you have your first-round pick. It'll be your first-round pick since 2021, but no second-rounder. So, you're getting closer to having your draft capital back. You have the most important thing, the first-rounder, but your cap space is blown up. So, again, you have to make decisions. You have to prioritize. So, it was offensive line and defensive line in 2023. It was targeted, thoughtful moves in 2024 in free agency, such as Malcolm Roach on the defensive line, picking up the contract of John Franklin Myers via trade, Brandon Jones at safety after he'd been sometimes a starter, sometimes a backup in Miami, so he's a value addition. And then, of course, not trading up, standing pat at 12, seeing if Bo Nix fell, and then getting the sixth quarterback off the board. QB6 on the draft board, but not QB6 on your draft board. And as I often have said, your draft board is the only draft board that matters. But you couldn't address Joker. Just like the year before, you couldn't address Joker. You couldn't go get one in free agency, and draft capital, you were limited. You got Marvin Mims Jr., who you're figuring out now has a role, as Cecil Lammey suggested, call him the Riddler now maybe rather than the Joker. 2024, you have to use a first-round pick on Bo Nix. Brock Bowers certainly could have been a tight end Joker, as we're seeing. Could have done all that. But you had to address quarterback. Just like you had to address line, you had to address quarterback. And we see here from what is a shaky quarterback class that it was a good thing the Broncos addressed quarterback last year. But because they've done those things, because they went inside out, then got the quarterback, now you're sitting here with resources at your disposal, cap and draft capital-wise. Now you can go shopping for a Joker. Thus, you're spending a lot of your time with tight ends. You're going to spend time with running backs. They're going to interview Ashton Jeanty, for example, here. You've got Omarion Hampton out of North Carolina on your radar. There are going to be others, but certainly in terms of Joker characteristics, which means you can do good things on the interior of the field. When you catch the football, you can make people miss. You've got Hampton, you've got Jeanty, you've got Loveland, and you've got Warren as all potential first-rounders. I don't know that all of them are going to be there at 20. If you consult certain mock drafts, some, if not all, maybe don't fall to 20. Some, like our friend Chad Ryder of NFL.com, believe that if you're going to get even Colston Loveland, tight end 2, you're going to have to move up to get him. So, plenty of discussions to be had. But the reason why the Broncos are able to go Joker now is because they've taken care of the other things. Rome was burning, so you had to address the line, and then you had to address the quarterback. They did those at the right time. So now you can go shopping at the toy department. And that's why if you can get that Joker, if you can get that inside pass-catching threat to unlock what Sean Payton wants to do offensively and unlock what Bo Nix can do, you're going to open things up on the outside as well, open things up for Cortland Sutton and those other young wide receivers, open things up for whoever ends up carrying the freight in the running game, whether it's the Joker also doing a lot in the ground game, or you have a more traditional running back, because Sean Payton does like to have two, a Joker and then a regular running back. So that's another thing to watch out for as well. It's why I say, hey, if you want to go really crazy, you could go Ashton Jeanty or Omarion Hampton and then Caleb Johnson in round 2. That's bonkers. I don't think they'll do that, but I've seen stranger things, because I've seen the Broncos take 3 corners with their first 3 picks in the first 3 rounds. So stuff happens in the draft, especially if you look long range and you look back far enough. So let's see where it goes. But it's exciting. It's exciting to talk about the Broncos going shopping for this kind of player in the offseason. Someone who might be a final piece for getting this team to where it can talk about being legitimately in the ranks of contenders. It's not there yet, but if you get the right guy, the right dynamic presence as an inside target from the tight end or running back position, you can start talking about things. Now the question is it a running back or a tight end? Maybe it's both. Running back at that joker type, a little bit harder to find than tight end. Probably fewer of those. I think overall, if you're talking about just tight end, running back, period, tight end is scarcer. Running back versus tight end in terms of the joker that Sean Payton talks about, running back is scarcer. So that may be something to bear in mind as you look at the players that we're going to talk about here over the next couple of months. Those are the top of the draft, like I mentioned. And then as you get in the second and third round, because they did interview with Gunnar Helm, they did interview Terrence Ferguson, they did interview Elijah Arroyo, who really does have some joker tight end characteristics as well. We can talk about Brashard Smith of SMU getting into day 2, day 3. We can talk about Devin Neal of Kansas. We can talk about some other targets like R.J. Harvey out of Central Florida, for example. There are others, but they're a bit more projections. So that's it. Like, comment, share, subscribe. I'm planning on posting more brain dumps here on this YouTube page that go a little bit beyond what I talk about on Orange and Blue Today and what I write about at denversports.com. So thanks for watching. Make sure you comment, even if it's negative, but try to be courteous, please. I'd appreciate it. Until next time, take care. Thanks for watching.